I think ESO has a pretty good community, but the question is why? Why does ESO have a pretty good community? And one of the reasons why it does is because it doesn't channel everyone down the same path. So imagine if you can do whatever you want, but there's only one thing that actually pays you really well, and that's doing drugs. All right? So then, yeah, you can pick any career choice you want. You can be burger flipper, $7 an hour. You can be a hotel worker, $7 an hour. You can work for a bank, $7 an hour. You can be a rocket scientist, $7 an hour. You can be the President of the United States, $7 an hour, all right? No matter what you do, you can do whatever you want, but you're never going to make more than $7 an hour unless you decide that your career choice is going to be drugs. And if you're going to sell drugs, then the sky's the limit. As much drugs as you can possibly sell. You're going to keep the profits. You're going to be rich. You're going to be successful. All right, so what does that do? It creates a situation where there's really only one good way to play the game. You're going to go do what you need to do to be successful. And what if that thing that you have to do to be successful isn't helpful to other players, other people, or yourself? It's toxic. It's harmful in some way. It's just not ideal, right? But it's the best way to get ahead. And there's only one best way to get ahead. Well, that's kind of how it is in some games, like maybe a sandbox MMO. There's only one really correct way to play, and that's to be as aggressive as you possibly can be and try to kind of grief other players, and you get ahead by being the most aggressive, griefing sort of a player that you can be. You don't really get a reward for sportsmanship. You don't get a reward for fair competition. You don't get a reward for being positive or supportive. You just get a reward only if you can outwit somebody weaker than you. And that's the problem with sandbox MMOs. But to a degree, it's also the problem with any game that doesn't give you a diversity of different play styles and options. And the Elder Scrolls games are known for trying to give players a sense of free agency, that you can do whatever it is you'd like to do. You could go be a home decorator. You could be a thief. You could be a role player just questing. You could be a gatherer who just gets raw mats and sells them. You could be someone who focuses on crafting. You could be someone who focuses on roleplay, not even really the game mechanics, just using the game as a backdrop for something kind of in the theme of a Dungeons and Dragons sort of experience, where you're telling your own story and you're making up your own narrative as you develop your character, totally independent of the game mechanics and official quests of the game. You could be a PvP player. You could be someone who just explores the open world because it's pretty and you like to walk around. There's so many different ways you can play. There's room for everybody's different play styles, and there's an incentive to say, well, here's how I play the game, but maybe you play it in a different way and you enjoy it in a different way. And that's healthy. That's nice. But in sandbox MMOs, it's quite different. And in those games, you'll have people say, well, okay, so you don't want to go do PvP, full loot, drop on death activities where you're going to be, probably go be killed by a bunch of players who will gang up on you. You don't like that. You didn't like the experience of that. Oh, well, then you should just quit. This game's not for you. Or, they'll just get out of their way to see if they can figure out how to, make a new player's life sort of miserable. Now, that doesn't represent every player by no means, but the fault of that happening is the game mechanics fundamentally steering players toward the conclusion that there's only one really good way to play the game. And you can, in theory, play the game however you want. But you're not going to have a good experience because the only way you're going to really get ahead and really be competitive is to play it in sort of a least common denominator way, to be that unfriendly, griefing player that's just trying to make other people's lives miserable and get ahead at their expense. Now, that doesn't mean that every player that griefs is a bad person. Not at all. But is there really a difference between role-playing as a bad person and actually being one? For all intents and purposes, the emotions that it evokes in an online, persistent gaming environment are the same. If I'm out gathering resources and I'm in a full loot zone and then 10 people come along, well geared, and they kill me off and they take all of my things. Well, there's no skill there. There's no fair fight because I can't possibly anticipate what sort of battle I'm going to encounter in the full loot zone. And you just have no way of beating a gang of 10 people against one. Doesn't matter how well you're geared, doesn't matter how well you know how to play. You're going to lose to the gang of people who are ganking you. That's how it is. Now, you can be a good sport about it. They can be a good sport about it. But it doesn't change the fact that you're role-playing something which is a fundamentally negative experience. If it happened in real life, where you were out trying to do something you wanted to do, and then people just came along, took all your stuff, and made you walk home in your underwear, how many times would you let that happen before you say, well, I'm not having a good experience with this, right? So it's true that there's a certain quality to some games that have realistic economies and full loot kind of environments. But the sandbox games don't provide a positive experience for people as a broad whole. My feeling is that's just the truth. So if you're going to spend time grinding in a game, seriously, why not put your time into a game that fundamentally encourages players to be cooperative and supportive of each other? ESO is that sort of a game. Games like EVE Online or Albion Online, fundamentally, while they're wonderful games, are not that kind of games. And I'm reminded of something I read about EVE Online, and it's also true for Albion Online. Those games have almost no female player base. Women do not play those games. And why? Why? It's probably because there's a lot of male players who like to kind of be macho, jump into a gang of other players, and then grieve people. There's nothing to cater to the female player base because that's more of a macho thing than a feminine thing. That's just the truth. And it's not inclusive at all. If you have a game where only the most repulsive group of one particular gender group are likely to actually even log in and play. And I think that's true for for the sandbox genre as a whole. It's also true for some games like New World, for example, where, yes, there are women who play the game. I know there are. And yet, overall, you'll find much more positive feedback from female players for good theme park MMOs like maybe ESO or Final Fantasy XIV. Why? Because those games fundamentally focus more on a respectful player experience instead of a more aggressive one that's competitive and unbalanced. Now, moving on, there's a few other things that contribute to ESO having a good sense of community, and they are partially related to the way guilds and chat work in the game. So first of all, if you go to a lot of MMOs, you'll find global chat. Well, that's great, but it winds up being a spam fest, because if you're able to see everything that anyone types in global chat, all it takes is one toxic person to say something in global, and next thing you know, everybody on the entire server is forced to read it. In ESO, you don't have a global chat. You have a zone chat. So the people that you're going to see chatting, if they're not your guild or your group, are going to be the people in that particular map zone where you currently are. That isolates some toxic behavior to a degree. And I think overall it is helpful to reduce some of that global spam that we see in other games. Another thing that is relevant is the way guilds work. So in a game like Albion Online, for example, if you join a guild, you're going to be doing some sort of massively multiplayer dedicated content where you're joining up with your guildies, you're going out, doing group activity, fighting in a group, gearing as a group, trying to achieve some sort of territory objectives or something like that. Ultimately, it's all very demanding of you as a player to commit to your guild. In ESO, guilds are a lot more casual. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not hardcore guilds where people are a lot more intense, but that's not all of them. It's very easy to join a guild. If you start playing ESO, before you know it, you're going to be in a guild. It's almost something you will wind up doing without even trying. Guild finder's very easy. Guilds tend to be very approachable and very casual. There's tons and tons of casual guilds where all you're going to do is you're going to join because you want to have access to sell things. There's no global market in ESO, so you're going to probably join some sort of a guild for the purpose of selling things. So you join a casual trading guild. No pressure, just sell something once in a while. That's all there is to it. But then you're going to have this group of players who you can interact with, you can chat with, you can join their Discord. Some of them are just social guilds, just a guild of people that get together if they feel like it, or maybe they don't even get together. They just chat in Discord or something while they do whatever it is they want to do as individual players. So it's really easy to find yourself in a guild. You don't have to think so much about whether you're going to have the time to commit to what they want you to do or anything like that. You just join and you're part of a guild. And then when you sign into the game, that's a group of people you have access to be interacting with. And even if you're not really active in the guild, you're still going to be able to just jump into the chat and say, hey, how's it going? Have a happy Sunday, And that's something. It creates a sense of social connection in a casual, safe, friendly way. And it helps steer players away from making their main source of interaction in the game a toxic global chat, which is filled with people that are hard pressed to, say anything nice at all. The kind of people who just spend most of their time trying to see if they can think of something offensive to say. I'll tell you, it's not fun at all to log into a game and every single time all you see people talking about is something offensive or something vulgar, and there's never any kind of sense of decency. And that's something that I've experienced in Albion Online. It's just obnoxious. I'm not even going to say that I'm offended. It's just obnoxious. It's stupid. It reminds me that the people who are playing this game are not the kind of people that I would ever want to associate with on any level in real life. And you start thinking, well, if I would never want to associate with these people in real life, then why am I sitting here playing a game with them? Because they don't have anything nice to say. They're hostile, negative, inflammatory people. And when they do actually talk about real content related to the game, it's usually related to some sort of griefing activity about ganking or taking other players' stuff. There's not really any positive, uplifting conversations that ever happen spontaneously. And if you ever have a casual player that's kind of like they came from a theme park MMO or something and they're just sort of there to get a feel for the game, somebody will grief them, say get good, and then tell them that they should just quit the game forever because they suck or something. Well, that's not the kind of people that you want to be around. Now, it's true that in those games, all games really, no one group of people speak for everyone. So no matter how much you go find one toxic experience or a lot of toxic experiences, that doesn't mean that all the experiences in the game are going to be toxic. If you give it a chance, that's true. You can find a good group of people to play with in probably just about any game you choose. But the question I have is, how much work do you want to have to put in before you can have a positive experience in the game? Should you have to work really hard to find a good experience, or should it just happen as a matter of course? And I think it's much better if you can find an experience that just works out in a positive way without you having to go out of your way to find it. You shouldn't have to burn through a whole bunch of toxic, overbearing, high-demand guilds before you find one where maybe the people are good in it. It should just be a good experience. And in ESO, I find it is. It's a good experience because there's so many systems that are incentivizing people to enjoy whatever playstyle appeals to them. So all different kinds of people have a place in the game. And if you are a toxic person that spends most of their time trying to make other people's lives miserable or talk down to other players for the way they play, you're not going to have a good experience because people are going to look at the person that's grieving, that's being toxic, that's being hostile and nasty, and they're going to say you're an idiot. Why are you being like that? And they'll report them, and there's just no incentive there. There's no incentive to be an idiot in ESO, whereas a lot of sandbox games there are. So find a game that doesn't incentivize bad behavior by having only one path that really winds up getting you ahead. And if you do that, then you're more likely to have a good experience because some people are going to just behave well no matter what. They're just, good people are not going to be nasty under any circumstance. Why would they? But then good people might also not stick around in an environment that's largely toxic and unfriendly and uninclusive. So, pick something that incentivizes good behavior, you're probably going to have a better experience. That's the bottom line. And ESO does a good job of that. It's not the best game at every single thing under the sun. That's not what I'm saying. But overall, the positive, friendly, normal kind of players seem to significantly outweigh the number of bad ones that you'll find. You know, as I encounter people in this game, I find all sorts of different people who play ESO. It's actually pretty incredible, really. Like, you think about gaming, you think that people are, like teenagers living in the basement or something. I don't know. You don't necessarily imagine that all different kinds of people play the game, right? But I found all different kinds of people in this game. I found people who are Lord of the Rings fans, people who are in their 60s, about to retire from a 40-year teaching career, or people who just finished up a 30-year career in law enforcement, or someone who's retired from the military and we're talking about some random thing like the weather in Nevada or something. It's just all kinds of random encounters with people, and you start to realize that every different type of player is in this game. All different kinds of people, young people, old people, men, women, all different sorts of folks are here, and they all come together with a sense of some sort of a shared value set, no matter how different they are. Because, you're not going to be here if you don't have a sort of a sense of shared interest in fantasy lore. And that's really amazing. And it's not the only game that's like that. There are other games that are that way, where you find all sorts of people playing them. But I also don't think that there's any other MMO out there that has the overall quality of graphical style on its side, or the overall quality of a lot of different systems like player housing, voice acted quests, beautiful world, a sense of ability to just explore without being tied to questing activities, or an active PvP community for that matter. It's not a perfect game, but it does a lot of things very well. And one of the best things it does is community. And that's also one of the most important things, because does it really matter what the game mechanics are like if the game experience is absolutely deplorable? If you don't enjoy the player interactions in an MMO, does it really matter how the economy functions? Does it really matter how the combat mechanics work? Because in the end, it's all about people. It's about being able to connect with other people and feel like you're part of something greater than just yourself. And even if you don't play with other people all the time, it's nice to know that you're not alone in the world. It's nice to have a sense of something shared with other people that's meaningful and positive. And especially in a world that's often quite harsh, I think we don't need to add more harshness to life by finding new ways to grief ourselves in our entertainment. Games are ultimately supposed to be fun. They're supposed to be positive experiences, not things that demoralize us and make us feel less than we would otherwise. Life can do that without needing to look for it in a game. So if you're going to try ESO, I think probably the best reason to recommend it would be the diversity of different play styles and the positive community. And I think that it's important as you look at other games and all the different titles there are out there. Whenever you're looking at multiplayer experiences, ask that question. What kind of community does it have? Are they positive kind of people? Can you easily find good comrades? Or does it seem like good people are in the minority? And if the answer is that it seems like good people are in the minority, then maybe you should just, give it a break for a while and try something else. Because there's plenty of good experiences to be had without settling for the ones that are negative and spiritually draining. So just my 2 cents on that. I think that just about covers it. In any case, thank you very much for watching. Till next time, I hope you have a wonderful day. Goodbye.